The skies over Sichuan darkened in late August, and what began as heavy summer rain quickly transformed into a relentless deluge that battered the province for days. Between the 28th of August and 30th, 2,025 torrents of water fell without mercy, saturating the fragile slopes of one of China's most geologically volatile landscapes. The earth, already fractured and weakened, could bear no more. Hillsides gave way with thunderous force, sending walls of mud, rock, and shattered trees cascading into valleys below. Entire stretches of countryside were torn apart, as if the land itself had rebelled against those who lived upon it. The first great collapse struck on the morning of the 29th of August in Luding County, where the rain had hammered the mountains for days. At 7:30 a.m., a section of hillside along National Highway E318, an essential lifeline that threads Sichuan to the distant Tibetan plateau, surrendered to gravity. In an instant, some 15,000 cubic meters of sodden earth and stone roared downward, swallowing nearly 70 meters of road. Traffic ground to a halt. Villages
Sichuan
beyond the slide
reached a
were cut off,
29-year peak,
and the silence of morning was shattered by the grinding roar of a mountain breaking apart. Authorities, who had been watching the slope closely as the rains gnawed away at its clay-rich foundation, had issued urgent evacuation just before it was a race against time, and their foresight spared lives that would otherwise have been lost to the avalanche of mud. The destruction did not stop there. On the 30th of August, as rescue teams still labored to reopen the blocked highway, the mountains above Libo County unleashed their own fury. Near Wei Township, a steep slope crumbled in dramatic fashion. What began as a shiver in the hillside swelled into a collapse 300
to the
meters
southeastern
wide.
coast of China.
More than 20,000 cubic meters of debris stones, the size of compact cars among them, tumbled down, scouring farmland in their path. Fields that once promised harvest were mangled into wastelands of boulder-strewn mud. Though no houses were buried, families were evacuated in haste,
into rivers,
their children clutching belongings as they fled downstream in fear of what the mountains might do next. Geologists later confirmed what the locals had long suspected. Fractures had been creeping silently across the slope for weeks. The downpour merely loosened the final threads that held the hillside together. Across the province, from the Ebian-Yingjing corridor to remote mountain hamlets, the same story echoed again and again. Smaller slides, severed rural roads, crumpled utility poles, and blanketed agricultural plots. Farmers awoke to find their fields erased beneath layers of earth. Some villages were isolated for hours, reachable only after crews hacked temporary paths through the wreckage. For those who lived deep in the folds of Sichuan's mountains, survival became a matter of endurance, waiting in the dark as emergency lights and machinery inched closer through the mud. The physical wounds on the landscape were staggering, but so too was the human toll of fear and uncertainty. Families abandoned their homes with little more than the clothes on their backs, watching helplessly as the mountains shifted and cracked under the weight of the storm. Elders recalled past disasters in hushed tones, while children stared wide-eyed at drones buzzing overhead, mapping the chaos from the sky. Roads, the arteries of the province, were severed in dozens of places, leaving some communities stranded in silence until relief convoys arrived. The economy, fragile in rural Sichuan, took another blow as crops were buried and transport routes destroyed. Each collapsed slope was more than a scar of earth. It was a disruption to trade, to harvests, to livelihoods. Yet amid the devastation, a formidable response unfolded.
Damaged infrastructure,
within hours of the
forced
first
evacuations in
collapse, over
several
3,000 personnel were on the ground. Geologists with specialized instruments, firefighters armed with search equipment, engineers carrying blueprints and drills, all converged in a desperate push to contain the disaster. Drones and radar systems scanned the unstable slopes, while excavators clawed at the wreckage to carve out makeshift lanes. By evening on the 29th of August, a single-lane bypass had been wrestled from the mud near Luding, giving stranded vehicles a fragile thread of hope. Protective mesh and rock anchors were hammered into trembling slopes, holding back the mountain's hunger for more destruction. In Libo, soldiers and volunteers lined up to shepherd families away from danger zones, their boots sinking into the mire as they ferried supplies on their backs. Sichuan's investment in disaster monitoring revealed its worth during those days. Real-time rainfall gauges, vibration detectors, and aerial mapping provided precious minutes of warning enough to save lives when the mountains began to slide. Without them, the human cost would have been unbearable. Still, the crisis underscored how precarious life remains in a province where rain, rock, and quake are constant threats. Even with technology, even with armies of responders, nature remains a step ahead, reminding all who dwell there of its unpredictable might. As the rains finally tapered and the skies cleared, a somber calm returned. The mountains stood scarred and unstable, their faces newly carved by nature's rage. Villagers walked the edges of ruined fields, silently measuring what was lost. Roads reopened, but with a fragility that hinted at more to come. Relief efforts brought order, but the question loomed: how many more storms will these mountains endure before they fall again? Sichuan has grown accustomed to living under the shadow of disaster, but each event leaves behind more than broken earth. It leaves warnings etched into memory. For those who fled the roaring landslides, for the farmers whose fields were erased, and for the children who clung to their parents as the ground shifted, resilience will be their only shield against what lies ahead. The mountains have spoken with fury. Whether the future brings silence or another roar depends on the storms yet to come. When the mountains move, they remind us of their power,
widespread
and our
backups,
fragility.
and overflowing manholes.
The rains brought both tragedy and proof that early warnings save lives. A balance between nature's wrath. It's like walking a tightrope in the storm. One step can hold, the next can crumble. Maybe that's the lesson: prepare, stay alert, and never underestimate what lies beneath the surface. Landslides don't just bury roads, they bury time, harvests, and memories. But they also teach us how to stand up again, even on shaky ground. Do you think technology will ever truly outpace nature's unpredictability, or are we always one storm away from disaster? Thank you for staying with me through this story. Share your thoughts below, or just leave comment number 1 if you want to show you're here and listening. Every voice counts, every lesson remembered. Landslide hit a section of National Highway 2, which is a pretty important road that connects Sichuan, Tibet, and other western parts of China.
Yeah.